Kang Minho stared at his screen with growing confusion. The numbers made no sense at all. He had been watching space signals for 12 years now, and had never seen anything like this. The quantum readings were jumping around like crazy fish in a net. Something was out there in the dark between stars, and it was screaming for help. The research ship Sejong moved slowly through empty space. It was not a big ship, but it was strong and safe. Minho worked in a small room filled with computers and screens. His job was to study alien life, but so far he had found nothing but empty planets and dead rocks. Today felt different, though. "Minho, are you seeing this?" asked Park Nari from across the room. She worked with communications, and her job was to listen for signals from other worlds. Her voice sounded excited and worried at the same time. She had thick black hair tied back and wore the blue uniform of the science crew. "Yes, I'm getting the same readings," said Minho. He was tall and thin, with careful hands that never shook when he worked. "The signals are coming from the Kepler 442 system. That is supposed to be empty space." Nari played the sound through the speakers. It was not like human speech at all. The sounds were like music, but sad music, like someone singing at a funeral. The tones went up and down in patterns that seemed to mean something important. Sometimes the sounds became sharp and painful, like breaking glass. "It sounds like they are in trouble," said Nari. Her fingers moved over her control panel, trying to clean up the signal. "This is not random noise. Someone is trying to talk to us." Captain Lee Dong-yun walked into the room. He was a strong man, with gray hair and scars on his hands from 20 years in space. He had fought in the Mars Wars and helped build the first colony ships. Everyone on the crew respected him because he always made good choices even when things got dangerous. "What do we have?" he asked in his quiet voice. "Unknown signals from an unexplored system," said Minho. "The readings show technology, but not human technology. The quantum signature is completely different from anything in our databases." The captain looked at the screens for a long moment. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "How far away?" 18 light years, said Nari. "We could be there in 6 months if we use the jump drive." "Sir, we are not supposed to investigate unknown signals without approval from Earth Command," said Dr. Yoon Ji-ho as he entered the room. He was the ship medical officer and also knew about alien biology. He was shorter than the others, with a round face and glasses that made his eyes look big. "I know the rules, Doctor," said the captain, "but these signals are getting weaker. If someone needs help, we might be their only chance." The sounds from the speakers became more urgent. Even though they could not understand the words, everyone could hear the fear and sadness in the alien voices. It was the sound of a dying people calling into the darkness, hoping someone would hear them. Minho worked on his computers, trying to learn more about the signals. The quantum patterns showed massive energy sources, but also something else. There were dead zones in the signals, like parts of the transmission were being cut off or destroyed. "There's something wrong with their technology," he said. "The signals keep getting interrupted. It is like something is eating their communications network." Dr. Yoon moved to another screen and started running tests on the signal patterns. His medical training taught him to look for signs of disease and injury even in alien transmissions. "The degradation pattern looks familiar," he said slowly. "It reminds me of how cancer spreads through healthy tissue." Nari suddenly sat up straight. "I am getting video," she said with excitement. "The signal is carrying images." The main screen flickered and then showed something beautiful and terrible. It was a city made of crystal that reached up toward purple skies. The buildings were like giant gems that caught light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Everything was curved and smooth, like it had grown instead of being built. But something was wrong with the crystal city. Parts of it looked sick. The beautiful colors were turning gray and black. The light that should have danced through the crystal was dim and dirty. As they watched, a tall crystal tower simply fell apart and turned to dust. "My God," whispered Dr. Yoon. "What is happening to them?" The image changed to show the aliens themselves. They were tall and thin, like living crystal statues. Their bodies were clear like glass, but filled with moving lights that pulsed like heartbeats. They had no faces as humans would recognize, but their whole bodies glowed with emotion. Right now they glowed with fear. One of the aliens stood in the center of what looked like a great hall. This one was larger than the others, and its crystal body held more complex patterns of light. When it spoke, the patterns changed like a visual language of pure light. "Can you translate any of this?" asked the captain. Nari shook her head but kept working. "The mathematical patterns might be universal," she said. "Give me time and I might be able to build a basic translation program." The alien leader continued to speak, and its light patterns became more desperate. Other crystal beings gathered around it. Some were clearly injured, with dark patches spreading through their clear bodies like infection. Others flickered weakly as if they were dying. Then the image showed the enemy. Tiny machines no bigger than insects swarmed across the crystal buildings. They moved in perfect formation, eating everything in their path. Where they passed, the beautiful crystal turned gray and dead. The machines worked together like a single mind with one purpose: to consume and convert. "Nanites," said Dr. Yoon with horror in his voice. "Self-replicating machines. But these are far more advanced than anything humans have built." The swarm of machines covered entire city blocks. They moved like water flowing downhill, but they were made of metal and circuits. Every few seconds they would pause and suddenly grow in number as they built more copies of themselves from the materials they had consumed. "How many of them are there?" asked the captain. Minho ran calculations on his computers. "Based on the images, I estimate billions of individual units, maybe trillions. They are converting the entire planet." The alien transmission showed more terrible images. Crystal people running through streets as the gray wave followed them. Families holding each other as the machines closed in. Beautiful gardens and parks turning to lifeless dust in minutes. But the most frightening thing was how fast it happened. The timestamps on the transmission showed that entire cities fell in just hours. The machines adapted to every defense the crystal people tried. When the aliens used energy weapons, the machines absorbed the power and grew stronger. When they tried to hide underground, the machines simply dug deeper. "This started 3 months ago," said Nari as she worked on translating the time codes. "They have been fighting this war for 3 months and they are losing." The transmission shifted to show the alien leader again. This time its light patterns were dim and tired. It was clear that this being carried the weight of its entire species on its shoulders. When it spoke now, there was no hope left, only a final, desperate message sent to the stars. "I think it is a distress call," said Nari. "They are asking for help from anyone who might be listening." Dr. Yoon studied the biological readings from the aliens. "Their physiology is completely different from ours," he said. "They are silicon-based life forms. Their bodies are living crystal matrices that conduct energy instead of blood." "Can they survive what is happening to them?" asked the captain. "Not for much longer," said the doctor grimly. "The machines are disrupting their energy patterns. It would be like if something attacked our nervous system and blood circulation at the same time." The transmission was getting weaker. Parts of the signal were now just static and noise. Whatever was broadcasting this message was running out of power, or being destroyed by the machine swarms. Captain Lee stood quietly for several minutes, watching the dying aliens on the screen. His crew waited for his decision. They all knew what he was thinking. Regulations said they should report this to Earth Command and wait for orders. But by the time Earth made a decision, these crystal people would all be dead. "Minho, how long would it take us to reach their system?" asked the captain. 6 months at maximum jump speed," answered the scientist. "They do not have 6 months," said Dr. Yoon. "From what I can see, they have weeks at most." The captain looked at each member of his crew. "I am going to ask something illegal of all of you," he said slowly. "We can attempt an experimental jump that might cut our travel time to 2 months. It is dangerous and we might not survive. Or we can follow regulations and let an entire species die while we wait for permission to help." Nari was the first to speak. "Those people are going to die if we do nothing," she said. "I volunteer for the experimental jump." "As do I," said Dr. Yoon. Minho nodded. "Someone has to help them." The captain smiled for the first time that day. "Then we jump in 6 hours," he said. "Prepare the ship and pray we are not too late." The transmission from the crystal world faded to static, just as the Sejong turned toward the unknown system. Behind them, Earth grew smaller, and ahead lay the darkness between stars. They were flying toward a war they did not understand to help people they had never met. It was the most human thing they could do. The experimental jump drive screamed like a wounded animal as the Sejong tore through space faster than any human ship had ever traveled. Captain Lee Dong-yun gripped his command chair as the ship shook and rattled around them. Warning lights flashed red across every control panel, and the air smelled of burning electronics. "Hull stress at 90%, shouted Engineer Choi Hyun-woo over the noise. He was a thick-built man with oil stains on his uniform who could fix anything that broke. "We are pushing the engines beyond their design limits. Can we hold together?" asked the captain. "Maybe," said Choi as he worked frantically at his controls. "The jump field is unstable, but I can keep us from exploding for now." 2 months of flying through twisted space had worn down both ship and crew. Everyone looked tired and stressed. They had all lost weight because the food processors kept breaking down. Dr. Yoon spent most of his time fixing equipment instead of doing medical work because everything on the ship was falling apart. But they had made it. The Kepler 442 system appeared on their screens as they dropped back into normal space. What they saw made everyone go quiet with shock and fear. The system was dying. Where their instruments said there should be a beautiful crystal world, they found something that looked like it was being eaten alive. The planet glowed with an evil gray light, and streams of dark matter flowed away from it like blood from a wound. "My God," whispered Park Nari as she stared at her sensors. "What have they done to that world?" The planet that had once been called Serenitas Prime by its crystal inhabitants was now covered in geometric patterns of gray and black. From space, it looked like a circuit board made of dead metal. The machine swarms had carved the entire surface into perfect squares and rectangles with no room left for nature or beauty. "I am reading massive energy signatures," said Kang Min-ho from his science station. "The machines have converted most of the planetary mass into computational matrix. They have turned the whole world into one giant computer." "What kind of computer?" asked the captain. "Unknown," said Min-ho. "But it is processing information at rates that should be impossible. The quantum calculations are beyond anything in human science." Kim Soo-young looked up from the tactical station. She was a serious woman with short hair and sharp eyes who had trained at the military academy on Mars. "Captain, I am detecting weapon systems on the planetary surface. Thousands of them. If they notice us, we will be destroyed instantly." "Are there any survivors?" asked Dr. Yoon Nari, worked at her communication systems, trying to find any trace of the crystal people they had come to help. For long minutes, there was nothing but the electronic noise of the machine networks. Then she found something that made her heart skip. "I am getting a signal," she said with excitement. "It is weak, but it is definitely organic. Someone is still alive down there." The signal was coming from deep underground in what used to be the largest crystal city. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but they could still hear the musical tones of crystal speech. It sounded like only a few voices now instead of the millions they had heard in the original distress call. "Can you clean it up enough for translation?" asked the captain. Nari had spent the 2-month journey building a translation program based on the mathematical patterns in the alien language. It was not perfect, but it could handle basic communication. She fed the new signal through her computers, and slowly words appeared on the screen. "Help us," the message said. "We are the last. The gray hunger grows stronger. Our light fades. Please, if anyone receives this message, know that we tried to fight. We tried to live." The voice belonged to the same alien leader they had seen in the first transmission. But now the light patterns were so dim they could barely be detected. The crystal being was dying along with its people. Captain Lee made a decision that would change everything. "Open a communication channel," he said. "All frequencies." "Sir, that will reveal our position to the machines," said Kim Soo-young. "We will be detected immediately." "Then we had better talk fast," said the captain. "Nari, transmit this message in their language. Tell them that friends have come from the stars. Tell them that humans are here to help." Nari typed the message into her translation program and sent it toward the dying world. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then slowly, a new signal came back. It was stronger than before, as if hope had given the crystal people new energy. "You are not from our world," came the translated response. "What manner of beings are you that can travel between stars?" "We are called humans," said the captain as Nari translated his words. "We come from a world called Earth. We received your distress call and came as quickly as we could." There was a long pause before the next message. "Earth," said the alien voice. "Our databases show this designation. You come from the legendary Deathworld. This cannot be true." Dr. Yoon looked confused. "Deathworld?" he asked. "What do they mean?" The alien continued speaking and the translation program worked to convert its musical tones into human words. "The galactic databases classify Earth as a Class 12 extinction environment. No intelligent life should be able to evolve there. The radiation levels are lethal. The atmospheric pressure would crush most beings. The weather systems are chaos itself. How do you survive on such a world?" The human crew looked at each other with surprise. Earth seemed perfectly normal to them. It was home. It was safe. They had never thought of their blue and green world as dangerous or deadly. "Our world is not dangerous to us," said the captain. "We evolved there. We are adapted to its conditions." "Impossible," replied the alien. "The databases show that Earth has killing weather that changes without warning. Toxic gases in the atmosphere, deadly bacterial and viral organisms, predator species that hunt for sport, geological instability that reshapes continents, electromagnetic storms that can destroy electronics. How do you exist in such horror?" Minho started to understand what the aliens meant. "Captain, I think their species evolved on a much more stable world than Earth. What is normal for us might seem like constant disaster to them." The alien leader continued to send messages that revealed more about the difference between their species. The crystal people had lived for millions of years on a world where the weather never changed. They had no diseases because their crystal bodies could not be infected by biological organisms. They had no predators because they were the only intelligent species on their planet. They had never known war or violence or struggle because they had never needed to fight for survival. "Your species has experienced the unthinkable," said the alien. "You have survived conditions that would kill us in moments. You must be incredibly strong and adaptable." Dr. Yoon was beginning to see possibilities. "Captain, if they cannot handle conditions that are normal for us, then maybe we can survive conditions that are lethal to them." "What do you mean?" asked the captain. "The machine swarms," said the doctor. "They might be using tactics and weapons that work perfectly against the crystal people but would be useless against humans." Kim Soo-young studied the tactical readings from the planetary surface. "The machines seem to be optimized for fighting crystal-based life forms," she said. "Their energy weapons would disrupt crystalline matrices, but they might not work as well against carbon-based tissue." The alien transmission continued with growing excitement in the translated words. "You survived your death world by learning to fight," said the crystal leader. "This is a concept unknown to our people. We have only ever known peace and harmony. But the gray hunger understands only consumption and growth. We need warriors, not philosophers." Captain Lee felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Tell them we will help," he said. "Ask them what they need." The response came back immediately. "We need teachers," said the alien. "Teach us how Deathworlders fight. Teach us how to survive when survival should be impossible. Teach us to think like you think." "How many of you are left?" asked the captain. "Perhaps 10,000 souls remain in the deep shelters," came the sad reply. "Once we numbered in the billions. The gray hunger consumed our cities and our people. Those who were caught by the machines were converted into processing nodes. Their consciousness still exists but serves only the swarm intelligence." Engineer Choi looked up from his instruments. "Captain, the planetary defenses are starting to track us," he said. "The machines know we are here." "Can we land?" asked the captain. "Not in the areas controlled by the machines," said Kim. "But I am reading a small zone near the survivor shelter that might be safe. The machines seem to avoid that region." "Why would they avoid it?" asked Dr. Yoon. Minho ran analysis on the sensor data. "The crystal people have created some kind of interference field," he said. "It is disrupting the machine networks in a small area around their shelter." How long will it hold? Asked the captain. Unknown, said Minho. But the field is weakening. The machines are adapting to it. The alien leader sent another urgent message. You must come quickly, it said. Our defenses fail. The gray hunger has learned to counter our harmonics. We have perhaps days before our final shelter falls. Captain Lee made the decision that would doom or save them all. Prepare for atmospheric entry, he said. We are going down to that planet, sir. The radiation from the machine activities will kill us in hours, said Dr. Yoon. Will it kill us faster than it kills them? Asked the captain. The surface of Serenitas Prime felt wrong under their feet. Engineer Choi Hyunwoo knelt down and touched the ground with his gloved hand. What should have been soil was now a metallic substance that hummed with electronic activity. The machines had converted even the dirt into processing material. Radiation levels are high but not lethal, reported Dr. Yoon Jiho as he checked his instruments. We can work out here for several hours before we need to return to the ship for decontamination. Captain, Lee Dong-yun looked around at the devastation surrounding their small safe zone. In the distance, gray towers reached toward the sky like metallic mountains. They pulsed with data streams and energy flows that hurt to look at directly. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the constant activity of billions of machines. How do we even begin to fight something like this? Asked Kim Soo-young as she studied the enemy through her tactical scanner. The answer came from underground. A section of crystal floor slid aside and alien beings emerged into the dim light. The first thing the humans noticed was how beautiful they were even in their weakened state. The crystal people moved like living sculptures with light flowing through their transparent bodies like liquid music. The alien leader approached them slowly. Its body was larger than the others and contained more complex patterns of light, but those patterns were dim and flickering now. When it spoke, the words came through their translation devices, formal and careful. Welcome, warriors from the death world Earth, said the crystal being. I am called by your language Christark, luminous song of dawn. Though my true name contains harmonic frequencies your voices cannot produce. Captain Lee stepped forward and removed his helmet. The alien air was thin but breathable for humans, though. It made them feel slightly dizzy. I am Captain Lee Dong-hyun of the human research vessel Sejong. We received your distress call and came to help. The Christark studied the human face with what seemed like fascination. You are smaller than our records suggested, it said. The databases indicated that Deathworld species would be giants with armor plating and energy weapons. You appear almost fragile. Dr. Yoon moved closer to examine the alien leader. May I scan your biology? He asked. I am a medical officer, and I want to understand how the machines are affecting your people. You may proceed, said the Christark. The doctor ran his scanner over the crystal being and immediately understood why they were losing the war. Your entire physiology is based on harmonic resonance, he said with amazement. Your thoughts, your emotions, your life force, everything operates through frequency patterns. This is correct, said the Christark. We are beings of living music. Our cities, our technology, our society all function through harmonic cooperation. And the machines are disrupting those frequencies, said Dr. Yoon. They are broadcasting interference patterns that break down your harmonic structures. The Christark dimmed with sadness. The gray hunger learned our frequencies within days of first contact. Now they use our own harmonic principles against us. Every defense we create they counter with mathematical precision. Engineer Choi was studying the machine towers in the distance through his engineering scanner. Captain, these nanites are unlike anything in human science, he said. They operate as a collective intelligence with perfect coordination. Every individual unit shares information instantly with every other unit. Perfect coordination, said Captain Lee thoughtfully. That might be their weakness. Kim Soo-young looked up from her tactical analysis. What do you mean, sir? Perfect coordination requires predictable responses, said the captain. The machines expect logical, rational behavior because that is how they function. But humans do not always act logically. Kang Min-ho was taking readings from the crystal shelter systems. The alien technology is incredibly advanced, he reported. Their quantum computers are centuries ahead of human science. but they are designed for harmony and cooperation, not for conflict. The Christarch led them down into the underground shelter, where the last survivors of an entire civilization waited in crystal chambers that glowed with fading light. There were perhaps 8,000 beings left from a population that had once numbered in the billions. The shelter itself was a marvel of crystal architecture. The walls were living jewels that conducted light and energy through their structure. Everything was curved and beautiful like the inside of a giant seashell, but the humans could see cracks spreading through the crystal matrix as the machine interference ate away at the harmonic foundations. "How long before this shelter fails?" asked Dr. Yoon. "Perhaps 10 of your days," said the Christarch sadly. "The gray hunger has learned to disrupt our quantum coherence patterns. Our very existence becomes impossible when exposed to their interference fields." Captain Lee gathered his crew around him. "We need to understand exactly what we are fighting," he said. "Kim, give me a tactical assessment." Kim consulted her scanner readings. "The machine swarm operates as a single distributed intelligence," she said. "Individual nanites are not very smart, but together they form something like a supercomputer. They learn and adapt in real time. Every tactic we use against them will be countered within hours." "What about their objectives?" asked the captain. "Complete conversion of all matter and energy into computational substrate," said Kim. "They want to turn the entire planet into processing power for their intelligence." Choi looked up from his equipment analysis. "The good news is that their technology has clear limitations," he said. "They are optimized for fighting crystalline harmonics, but human technology operates on completely different principles." "Explain," said the captain. "Our weapons use chemical explosives, electromagnetic fields, and kinetic energy," said Choi. "The machines expect frequency-based attacks because that is what the crystal people use. Our chaotic human technology might confuse their adaptive algorithms." Dr. Yoon was examining the converted crystal people who had been captured by the machines. The poor beings were still alive, but their consciousness had been enslaved to serve the machine intelligence. "The nanites hack their harmonic frequencies and reprogram their minds," he said with horror. "But human brains do not operate on harmonic principles." "You mean they cannot convert us the same way?" asked the captain. "Correct," said the doctor. "Human consciousness is electrochemical, not harmonic. The machine conversion protocols would not work on human neurology." Park Nari had been working on communication intercepts from the machine networks. "Captain, I am picking up their strategic planning communications," she said. "The machines are preparing for a final assault on this shelter in 72 hours. The Christarch flickered with despair. "Then we have failed," it said. "There is no possible defense against their coordinated attack. We will join our brothers and sisters in eternal servitude to the gray hunger." Captain Lee stood up and looked at the beautiful, dying crystal people around him. "Not if we teach you to fight like humans," he said. "We do not understand," said the Christarch. "Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day," said the captain. "We learned to survive by being unpredictable, adaptable, and sometimes completely irrational. We fight dirty when we have to." Engineer Choi smiled for the first time since landing. "I have an idea," he said. "What if we build weapons that make no sense?" "What kind of weapons?" asked Kim. "Chaos weapons," said Choi. "Devices that produce random, unpredictable effects. The machines cannot adapt to something that has no pattern to learn." Dr. Yoon nodded with understanding. "Like biological immune systems," he said. "The most effective defenses are the ones that change randomly." Minho looked excited. "We could use quantum uncertainty principles," he said. "Build devices that operate on true randomness at the subatomic level. The machines could not predict or counter pure quantum chaos." The Christarch listened to their discussion with growing amazement. "You speak of deliberately creating disorder," it said. "This concept is alien to our understanding. We have always sought harmony and balance. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them," said Captain Lee. "That is the first lesson of Deathworld survival." Over the next day, the humans worked frantically to build their chaos weapons using parts from their ship and materials scavenged from the crystal technology. Choi created electromagnetic pulse devices that would fire random frequency bursts. Dr. Yoon developed biological agents that would introduce unpredictable variables into machine systems. Minho built quantum field generators that operated on pure uncertainty principles. But the most important work was done by Park Nari. She taught the crystal people how to lie. Deception is a fundamental human survival skill, she explained to a group of confused aliens. When something is trying to kill you, sometimes the best defense is to make it think you are somewhere else or something else. The crystal people found this concept almost impossible to understand. Their entire civilization was based on truth and harmony. They had never needed to deceive anyone about anything. "Watch," said Nari as she demonstrated. She set up a simple, holographic projector that showed an image of humans running in one direction while the actual humans moved in the opposite direction. "The machines will track the false images while we attack from an unexpected angle," the Crystarch observed, this demonstration with what might have been shock. "You create false harmonics deliberately," it said. The machine assault came at dawn with the precision of a mathematical equation. Millions of nanites flowed across the crystalline landscape like a metallic ocean moving in perfect geometric patterns. Their synchronized advance should have overwhelmed any defense the crystal people could mount. Instead, they encountered madness. Sergeant Nam Tae-hyun crouched behind a crystal barrier that had been deliberately cracked to create unpredictable electromagnetic resonance. He was a compact, muscular man with scars on his face from the fighting on Europa Station. His job was to lead the small squad of human soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous missions. "Steady," he whispered to the crystal warriors beside him. The aliens had learned to fight over the past few days, but they still moved with hesitant grace instead of human aggression. "Remember what we taught you. Think chaos, not harmony." The lead wave of machines crested the ridge and immediately encountered the first layer of human defense. Engineer Choi had rigged the entire perimeter with quantum uncertainty mines that exploded with completely random effects. Some created electromagnetic pulses. Others released clouds of adaptive nanotechnology. A few simply made very loud noises and bright flashes of light. The machine intelligence tried to analyze the pattern of explosions and adapt their approach accordingly, but there was no pattern to analyze. Each mine operated on pure quantum randomness, making prediction impossible. "First blood to the humans," said Kim Soo-young from the command center deep in the crystal shelter. Her tactical screens showed the machine advance slowing as their algorithms struggled to process the chaos. But the machines were learning. They began sending small scout groups to trigger the mines while the main force waited safely behind. It was a logical tactical adaptation that should have worked perfectly. Dr. Yoon activated his biological countermeasures. Clouds of engineered bacteria spread across the battlefield programmed with human immune system responses. Instead of following predictable programming like normal nanites, these biological agents adapted and evolved in real time. They attacked the machine scouts with random chemical reactions that changed every few seconds. "The machines cannot counter evolution in progress," said Dr. Yoon as he watched his microscopic warriors clash with the enemy nanites. "They are trying to adapt to something that is adapting faster than they can process." Captain Lee coordinated the defense from the central command chamber surrounded by crystal walls that now pulsed with chaotic human technology. "Nari, how are our deception protocols working?" he asked. Park Nari monitored the false signal generators that were broadcasting fake communications across all frequencies. "The machines are chasing ghost signals all across the continent," she said with satisfaction. "They think we have troops in 12 different locations." The Crystarch stood beside the human captain watching the battle unfold through holographic displays. Its crystal body flickered with emotions it had never experienced before. Fear mixed with excitement. Desperation combined with hope. For the first time in its peaceful existence, it was learning what it meant to fight for survival. "Your people embrace conflict as if it were natural," observed the alien leader. "This is disturbing and beautiful at the same time." "Conflict is natural," said Captain Lee. "On Earth, everything fights everything else constantly. Plants fight for sunlight. Animals fight for territory. Weather systems fight each other across our skies. We learn to survive by becoming the best fighters on a world full of fighters." The machine assault reached the second defensive line where Sergeant Nam had positioned his mixed teams of humans and crystal people. The aliens had been learning human tactics, but they still struggled with concepts that went against their peaceful nature. "Fire at will," shouted Nam as the machine swarmed toward their positions. The crystal warriors raised their harmonic weapons and began to sing their battle songs. But instead of the pure, harmonious tones their ancestors had used, these songs were filled with discord and chaos. They had learned to make their music into weapons of confusion. The machines staggered as the chaotic harmonics disrupted their communication networks. For a few precious seconds, the perfect coordination that made them so dangerous broke down into electronic noise and conflicting signals. In that moment of confusion, the humans struck with purely kinetic weapons. Explosive rounds and electromagnetic railgun fire tore through machine formations while they were still trying to re-establish their network connections. "Reload and move," ordered Nam. "Do not stay in one position long enough for them to predict your location." This was the hardest lesson for the crystal people to learn. Their entire civilization was built around staying in harmony with fixed locations and eternal structures. The idea of constant movement and change felt wrong to their basic nature. But those who adapted survived, while those who clung to old ways were converted by the machine swarms. Engineer Choi had been working on the most audacious plan of all. Using the crystal people advanced quantum technology, he was building a weapon that operated on pure chaos theory. Instead of trying to destroy the machines, it would introduce random variables into their collective intelligence. "Think of it as a virus for their artificial mind," he explained to Kang Minho, who was helping with the quantum calculations. "We cannot kill their bodies, but we can make their shared consciousness sick with uncertainty." The weapon looked like a crystal sculpture filled with human electronic components. It was beautiful and ugly at the same time, representing the fusion of two completely different approaches to technology. "Will it work?" asked Minho, as he ran final calculations on the quantum resonance patterns. "I have no idea," said Choi honestly. "That is what makes it perfect. If we do not know what it will do, then the machines cannot predict it either." The third wave of machine attacks came with new adaptations. They had learned to counter the human chaos weapons by accepting uncertainty as a normal part of the battlefield. Their formations became more fluid and their tactics more creative. But creativity was a human invention, and the machines were still learning how to use it. Dr. Yoon released his ultimate biological weapon. He had created a synthetic plague designed to infect machine networks the same way diseases spread through organic populations. The artificial virus jumped from nanite to nanite, introducing random errors into their programming. The effect was like watching a computer system slowly going insane. Machine units began to malfunction in creative ways. Some started building structures that served no purpose. Others began communicating in patterns that resembled poetry rather than tactical data. "The biological approach is working," reported the doctor. "The machines are experiencing something like electronic dementia, but the machine intelligence was vast and redundant. Even as some units succumbed to the artificial plague, others adapted to resist it. The war became a biological arms race between human creativity and machine evolution happening at the speed of light. Kim Soo-young coordinated multiple simultaneous attacks across the planetary surface. Using the chaos weapons as cover, human teams began striking at machine processing centers in distant parts of the world. Each attack used completely different tactics, making it impossible for the machine intelligence to develop effective countermeasures. Strike. Team Alpha is using explosive charges on the northern processing facility, she reported. Strike Team Beta is introducing biological agents into the eastern computational matrix. Strike Team Gamma is broadcasting chaotic interference patterns at the southern communications hub. The machine intelligence tried to respond to all these attacks simultaneously, but human unpredictability made coordination difficult. Resources were wasted chasing false targets while real threats succeeded in causing significant damage, but the humans were paying a price for their victories. The chaotic tactics that made them effective also made them impossible to coordinate perfectly. Several teams were lost when their own unpredictability led them into situations they could not escape. Sergeant Nam barely survived when his position was overrun by machines that had learned to anticipate his chaos tactics. He and his remaining crystal warriors fought a running battle through the ruins of a crystal city while calling for extraction. "This is Nam," he radioed, as explosive rounds detonated around his position. "We are surrounded and taking heavy casualties. The machines have learned to be random, too." Captain Lee made the hardest decision of his military career. "All units retreat to final defensive positions," he ordered. "We are implementing scorched earth protocols." The scorched earth tactic was something the crystal people had never imagined in their worst nightmares. To save their civilization, they would have to destroy parts of it. Sacred crystal formations that had stood for millions of years would be demolished to deny them to the machines. The crystarch flickered with anguish as human explosives brought down ancient spires that had been the heart of crystal culture. "We are destroying everything we sought to preserve," it said sadly. "Sometimes destruction is the only path to survival," said Captain Lee. "This is the cruelest lesson that Earth taught us. To live, we must be willing to sacrifice anything, including the things we love most." As the crystal cities fell to human demolitions, the machine swarms found themselves with nothing left to convert. 1 year later, Serenitas Prime looked like a world that had learned to fight. The crystal cities that rose from the ashes of the machine war were different from their ancient predecessors. They still sang with harmonic beauty, but now their songs contained new notes of strength and defiance. Captain Lee Dong-yun stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Crystal Palace, watching construction crews work on the new defensive installations. Human engineering had merged with crystal architecture to create something that was both beautiful and deadly. The elegant spires now contained weapon systems, and the graceful bridges could be converted into fortified positions at a moment's notice. "It feels strange to see our world prepared for war," said the being who had once been called Crystarch Luminous Song of Dawn. The crystal leader had taken a new name after learning to fight. Now it was known as Crystarch Who Learned to Fight, and its light patterns contained traces of human determination mixed with crystal wisdom. "War is not the goal," said Captain Lee, "but being ready for war is what keeps peace possible. This is another lesson from our death world." The machine plague had been defeated, but at a terrible cost. Most of the planet's surface had been stripped bare and rebuilt. Millions of crystal people had died in the fighting, and those who survived were changed forever. They could no longer be the purely peaceful beings they had been before. Dr. Yoon Ji-ho emerged from the medical center where he had been training crystal healers in human battlefield medicine. The aliens learned quickly, but they still struggled with concepts like triage and acceptable losses that came naturally to humans who had evolved in a world of constant danger. "The integration therapy is showing good results," he reported to them, "Captain. The crystal people who were partially converted by the machines are recovering their individuality. The human psychiatric techniques seem to work even on crystalline consciousness. This had been one of their greatest discoveries during the war. Human knowledge of trauma and recovery applied surprisingly well to alien minds that had been damaged by the machine intelligence. The crystal people were learning to heal not just their bodies but their spirits using techniques developed by humans who had survived their own wars." Park Nari walked up the crystal steps carrying a data pad filled with communication reports. She had been working with crystal technicians to establish contact with other species in the galaxy. The victory over the machines had attracted attention from civilizations that had been hiding in fear. "We have 17 new first contact requests," she said with excitement. "Species from across the galaxy are asking for help with problems they consider impossible to solve." "What kinds of problems?" asked the captain. Nari consulted her notes. "The Ethereal Collective is dealing with a stellar parasite that feeds on solar energy. The Harmony worlds are being invaded by quantum predators from parallel dimensions. The Archive Keepers are fighting a digital plague that corrupts historical records." Captain Lee smiled. Each of these problems sounded impossible to solve using conventional approaches, but humans had learned that impossible problems usually just required unconventional solutions. Engineer Choi Hyun-woo had been working with Crystal artisans to develop new technologies that combined human chaos theory with alien harmony principles. The results were devices that seemed to operate on pure magic, but were actually sophisticated applications of quantum uncertainty. The new defensive Grid is operational, he reported. If another machine swarm arrives, they will encounter weapons that literally cannot be predicted, because they operate on pure randomness controlled by artistic inspiration rather than mathematical calculation. This was perhaps the strangest legacy of the human presence on Serenitas Prime. The Crystal people had learned to use chaos as a creative force rather than something to be feared. Their new art forms and technologies incorporated uncertainty as a fundamental design element. Sergeant Nam Tae-hyun had established a training academy where crystal warriors learned human combat techniques adapted for their unique physiology. The classes were strange to observe as graceful crystal beings practiced aggressive tactics that seemed to go against their peaceful nature. The first graduating class is ready for deployment, he reported. They will never fight like humans, but they have learned to think like humans when necessary. The crystal warriors moved with fluid grace, but their formations now included unpredictable elements, and their harmonic battle songs contained deliberate discord. They had learned that perfect harmony could be a weakness when facing enemies who thrived on chaos. Kim Soo-young had been working with crystal strategists to develop new military doctrines that could be shared with other peaceful species facing aggressive enemies. The tactical manuals they produced read like poetry, but contained lessons learned from the bloodiest wars in human history. The Galactic Defense Consortium wants copies of our training programs, she reported. 12 different species have requested military advisors trained in Deathworld survival techniques. This was the emergence of a new role for humanity in galactic civilization. They were becoming the specialists called in when impossible problems required impossible solutions. Other species provided wisdom and technology, but humans provided the ability to survive and adapt when survival should have been impossible. Kang Min-ho had been studying the remains of the machine intelligence, trying to understand how such an advanced artificial mind had been defeated by what amounted to organized chaos. His research was revealing fundamental principles about intelligence itself. The machines failed because they assumed intelligence meant perfect logic, he explained to a gathering of crystal philosophers. But human intelligence evolved to function in an illogical universe. We learned to be smart about being stupid when being stupid was the smart thing to do. The Crystal people found this concept both fascinating and disturbing. Their entire civilization had been built on logical harmony, but they were learning that logic alone was not sufficient for survival in a dangerous universe. The Crystarch who learned to fight had been corresponding with leaders of other peaceful species who were facing their own impossible challenges. The crystal world was becoming a center for teaching survival to those who had never needed to learn it. We have become something new, the Crystarch said to Captain Lee as they watched the sunset paint the rebuilt crystal spires in shades of gold and orange. We are no longer the purely peaceful beings we once were, but we are also not the aggressive warriors you humans became. We are something in between. That might be the best possible outcome, said the captain. Pure peace cannot survive in a dangerous universe, but pure aggression destroys everything worth protecting. Balance is the hardest lesson to learn. The human crew of the Sejong had been preparing to leave Serenitas Prime for months, but they kept finding new reasons to stay. Their presence had changed not only the Crystal people but themselves as well. They had learned that teaching survival could be just as important as surviving. But the galaxy was full of impossible problems, and other species were sending desperate calls for help. The reputation of the humans as Deathworld problem solvers was spreading faster than they could respond to requests for assistance. Captain, we have received orders from Earth Command, said Nari, as she brought the latest communications from home. The Terran Federation is establishing the Impossible Problems Division. We have been selected as the flagship crew. Captain Lee read the orders with mixed emotions. They were being asked to take their ship and their hard-won experience to help other species facing extinction-level threats. It was an honor and a burden that would define the rest of their lives. The Ethereal Collective needs help within 6 months or their entire stellar system will be consumed by the star parasite, said Nari. After that, the Archive Keepers are requesting assistance with their digital plague, then the Quantum Predator, invasion in the Harmony Worlds. Dr. Yoon looked thoughtful. Each of these problems will require completely different approaches. We will need to learn new forms of creative chaos for each species we help. That is what makes us human, said Engineer. Choi, we adapt, we learn. We find ways to survive things that should kill us, and then we teach others how to do the same. The Crystal people had prepared a farewell ceremony that lasted 3 days and incorporated both their traditional harmonic festivals and new human elements like controlled explosions and displays of organized chaos. It was a celebration that could have been created by no other combination of species in the galaxy. As the Sejong prepared to leave orbit, the crew could see the changes they had made to an entire world. The crystal cities now sparkled with defensive systems. The crystal people now moved with purposeful determination instead of pure grace. The planet itself had learned to be beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Will we see them again? Asked Nari as she watched Serenitas Prime shrink in the view screen. I think we will be seeing a lot of each other, said Captain Lee. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and peaceful species are finally learning they need teachers who understand danger. The message from the Ethereal Collective was waiting in their communications buffer, along with requests from dozens of other species facing impossible problems. Each message told the same story.